As an usher at the Paramount Theater, this is when the height of the movie, the glory fame of Hollywood. You know, the movies were it. There was no television, so the movies were your weekly entertainment. You went 2, 3 times a week to the movies. Anyway, the Paramount Theater had an army of ushers, maybe 20, and every morning they'd have hand inspection, glove inspection. It was like an army. You know, the ushers with the flashlights would lead you to your seats. And when you went to these big movie palaces like the Paramount Theater and the New Amsterdam Theater and some of those on Broadway and Times Square, you were treated as if you were going into the Buckingham Palace. I mean, they really were splendor. It was a splendor experience. You know, when you escaped from reality for 2, 3 hours, you were in this beautiful marble palace with paintings and grand staircases and Baroque furniture. So anyway, they called him Long John Nebel. That was just a nickname, but he was up all night, and he would have all these great, guests on his show. And they had a lot about UFOs. They were always having people that were abducted by alien spaceships. That's the first time I've ever heard about that Lamparski, what his name is. What's that guy's name?
Billy Meyer?
Yeah, Billy Myers. Well, yeah, and then they always had Jacqueline Suzanne before she was real famous. She wrote Every Night Josephine. She was a regular guest on that show. Later, she wrote Valley of the Dolls and all these really popular books, you know. So anyway, he was the first one I listened to. Then there was Bob Grant I used to listen to, Barry Gray. Barry Gray had a great show, one of the great masters of radio. And, of course, my all-time favorite would be George Putnam, unfortunately, who recently passed the cheapest celebrity. Oh, I'm trying to explain that. Okay. Well, years ago, when I'm writing a book on this right now because it's quite interesting, my experiences in this particular. It was a very exclusive flower and gift shop in New York City. And I had friends that owned it, and a lot of times during lunchtime I'd run over there. But during November and December for 2 years, I actually worked there, full time. And it was wonderful. And they had Katharine Hepburn and Dina Merrill and all these people would come in. They're regular guests of the shop. Joan Chandler, she was a movie actress that appeared in Alfred Hitchcock Show. Anyway, one day Robert calls me and he tells me that we have a special arrangement for Barbra Streisand, and would I deliver it? And also, because I'm an artist and I have the best handwriting, would I write the note? It's from her Uncle Harry. So I wrote the note real nice in purple ink, and I wrote, "To Barbara, with love from Uncle Harry." And Robert made this beautiful arrangement in a wicker basket of daisies, beautiful daisy arrangement. And then Tom drove me up I think it was the 91st Street, Central Park West, where Barbra Streisand lived, up on one of the upper floors. She actually lived in the condo, which is now condos. It was the Moss Hart apartment. Moss Hart was one of the great songwriters of Rodgers and Hart, who wrote all the Broadway shows. Anyway, that was his apartment that she bought. And so I go up there in the servants' entrance, naturally, and the guard opened the door, and he kind of waited for me, and I went and rang the doorbell, and her secretary, this French woman, very attractive French woman, opened the door, and that time little Jason, who was, at that time, he had a little afro hair, it was reddish brown. He had a green t-shirt and jeans, and I would say he was about 5 or 6, a real cute kid. He answered the door with her, and they were smiling, and I said, "I have a special delivery for a Miss Streisand." And so the woman said, "Oh, thank you, wait a second." So she went and she shut the door sort of partly, and it was open a little bit, and behind the door I hear her talking real low to Barbra Streisand, because who else had a Brooklyn accent, at that time, that loud. And so there was this long pause, and they were whispering, and then finally the girl opened the door again, and she stuck her head, and she looked so embarrassed. I felt embarrassed for her, because I had a really good job. I'm working for design studios and everything, but I thought I was such a Streisand fan at that time that I said I'm going to get a souvenir from her. So I figured I'll get a tip. So the secretary asked me. She said, "Do you have 50 cents?" And I said, "Yes." And so she gave me $1, and I had to give her 50 cents.
It was a
50 cents back. So I kept the $1, and I took it home, and then that night I called long distance. I was all excited. I lived in Brooklyn Heights, And I called long distance to my mother who lived in Maple Heights, Ohio, and I said, Ma, guess what? I said, I just delivered something to Barbara Streisand. And my mother said, did she give you something? And I said, well, she gave me $1, but I had to give her 50 cents back. And then my mother made one of her famous comments of all time, which I shall not say.
Go ahead, John, say it.
No, because it's just not right. But she said, ain't that just like a, you take it from there. So, and then one day I'm sitting there, I just got there and we're having lunch. I'm sitting at the guest table. I'm eating with the bookkeeper, whose name was Tom. And the door opens and this woman walks in backwards, and she has this hair up and she was wearing a lining up coat. So she turns around with this box of empty, flower containers, and it's Katharine Hepburn. So I'm eating my ham sandwich over there, and I turn around and I said, "Oh my God, it's Katharine Hepburn!" I lost total composure. I mean, because I never thought in my lifetime I'd see her. So she heard me, and she comes walking with the box. She says, "All right, it's only me. Don't get excited. Eat your ham sandwich." And then she continued to give Robert the instructions about to fill the containers and everything, and she'd be back with the car the next day to pick up the arrangements. So that was my Katharine Hepburn story. But there were many really interesting stories in that that happened in that shop that I'll talk about in the future if you're interested. But I am they're all been written about already in this book that I